Section 22 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Katarina Huang. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1, by Cao Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bancroft Jolly. Chapter 10, Part 1. Widow Jin, prompted by a desire to reap advantage, puts up temporarily with an insult. Dr. Zhang, in discussing Mrs. Jin's illness, minutely exhausts its origin. We will now resume our story. As the persons against Jinrong were so many, and their pressure so great, and as, what was more, Jia Rui urged him to make amends, he had to knock his head on the ground before Qin-zhong. Pao-yü then gave up his clamorous remonstrance, and the whole crowd dispersed from school. Jinrong himself returned home all alone, but the more he pondered on the occurrence, the more incensed he felt. Qin-zhong, he argued, is simply Jia Rong's young brother-in-law, and is no son or grandson of the Jia family, and he too joins the class and prosecutes his studies on no other footing than that of mine. But it's because he relies upon Pao-yü's friendship for him that he had no eye for anyone. This being the case, he should be somewhat proper in his behavior, and there would be then not a word to say about it. He has, besides, all along been very mystical with Pao-yü, imagining that we are all blind and have no eyes to see what's up. Here he goes again today and mixes with people in illicit intrigues, and it's all because they happened to obtrude themselves before my very eyes that this rumpus had broken out. But of what need I fear? His mother, née Hu, hearing his mutter, "Why meddle again," she explained, "in things that don't concern you? I had endless trouble in getting to speak to your paternal aunt, and your aunt had, on the other hand, 1,001 ways and means to diverse, before she could appeal to Lady Secunda, of the Western Mansion, and then only it was that you got this place to study in. Had we not others to depend upon for your studies, would we have in our house the means sufficient to engage a teacher? Besides, in other people's school, tea and eatables are all ready and found, and these 2 years that you've been there for your lessons, we've likewise effected at home a great saving in what would otherwise have been necessary for your eating and use. Something has been, it's true, economized, but you have further a liking for spick-and-span clothes. Besides, it's only through your being there to study that you've come to know Mr. Hsüeh, that Mr. Hsüeh, who has even in 1 year given us so much pecuniary assistance as 70 and 80 taels. And now you would go and raise a row in this schoolroom. Why, if we were bent upon fighting such another place, I tell you plainly, and once for all, that we would find it more difficult than if we tried to scale the heavens. Now do quietly play for a while, and then go to sleep, and you'll be ever so much better for it then." Jinrong thereupon stifled his anger and held his tongue, and, after a short while, he in fact went to sleep on his own accord. The next day he again went to school, and no further comment need be made about it. but we will go on to explain that a young lady related to her had at one time been given in marriage to a descendant of the eldest branch of the Jia family, whose names were written with the jade radical, Jia Huang by name. But how could the whole number of members of the clan equal in affluence and power the two mansions of Ning and Rong? This fact goes, as a matter of course, without saying. The Jia Huang couple enjoyed some small income, but they also went, on frequent occasions, to the mansions of Ning and Rong to pay their respects, and they knew likewise so well how to adulate Lady Feng and Mrs. Yu, that Lady Feng and Mrs. Yu would often grant them that assistance and support which afforded them the means of meeting their daily expenses. It just occurred on this occasion that the weather was clear and fine, and that there happened, on the other hand, to be nothing to attend to at home. So forthwith taking along with her a matron, Mrs. Jia Huang, got into a carriage and came over to see widow Jin and her nephew. While engaged in a chat, Jinrong's mother accidentally broached the subject of the affair which has transpired in the schoolroom of the Jia mansion on the previous day, and she gave, for the benefit of her young sister-in-law, a detailed account of the whole occurrence from beginning to end. This Mrs. Huang would not have had her temper ruffled had she not come to hear what had happened, but having heard about it, anger sprung from the very depths of her heart. "This fellow, Qin Zhong," she exclaimed, "is a relative of the Jia family, but is it likely that Rong-er isn't, in like manner, a relative of the Jia family? And when relatives are many, there is no need to put on airs. Besides, does his conduct consist, for the most part, of anything that would make one get any face? In fact, Pao-yü himself shouldn't do injury to himself by condescending to look at him. But, as things have come to this pass, give me time and I'll go to the Eastern Mansion and see Our Lady Zhen, and then have a chat with Qin Zhong's sister and ask her to decide who's right and who's wrong." Jinrong's mother, upon hearing these words, was terribly distressed. "It's all through my hasty tongue," she observed with vehemence. "That I've told you all, sister-in-law, but please, sister, give up at once the idea of going over to say anything about it. Don't trouble yourself as to who is in the right and who is in the wrong, for were any unpleasantness to come out of it, how could we here stand on our legs? And were we not to stand on our legs, not only would we never be able to engage a tutor, but the result would be, on the contrary, that for his own person will be superadded many an expense for eatables and necessaries." "What do I care about how many?" replied Mrs. Huang. "Wait till I've spoken about it, and we'll see what will be the result." Nor would she accede to her sister-in-law's entreaties, but bidding at the same time the matron look after the carriage, she got into it and came over to the Ning mansion. On her arrival at the Ning mansion, she entered by the eastern side gate, and dismounting from the carriage, she went in to call on Mrs. Yu, the spouse of Jia Zhen, with whom she had not the courage to put on any high airs, but gently and quietly she made inquiries after her health, and after passing some irrelevant remarks, she ascertained, "How is it I don't see Lady Rong today?" "I don't know," replied Mrs. Yu. "What's the matter with her these last few days?" but she hasn't been herself for 2 months and more, and the doctor who was asked to see her declares that it is nothing connected with any happy event. A couple of days back, she felt, as soon as the afternoon came, both to move and both even to utter a word, while the brightness of her eyes was all dimmed. And I told her, you needn't stick to etiquette, for there's no use for you to come in the forenoon and evening, as required by conventionalities, but what you must do is to look after your own health. Should any relative come over, there's also myself to receive them, and should any of the senior generation think your absence strange, I'll explain things for you, if you'll let me. I also advised Brother Rong on the subject. You shouldn't, I said, allow anyone to trouble her, nor let her be put out of temper, but let her quietly attend to her health, and she'll get all right. Should she fancy anything to eat, just come over here and fetch it. For, in the event of anything happening to her, were you to try and find another such a wife to wed, with such a face and such a disposition, why, I fear, were you even to seek with a lantern in hand, there would really be no place where you could discover her. And with such a temperament and deportment as hers, which of our relatives and which of our elders don't love her? That's why my heart has been very distressed these 2 days. As luck would have it, early this morning her brother turned up to see her, but who would have fancied him to be such a child and so ignorant of what is proper and not proper to do? He saw well enough that his sister was not well, and what's more, all these matters shouldn't have been recounted to her. For even supposing he had received the gravest offense imaginable, it behoved him anyhow not to have broached the subject to her. Yesterday, one would scarcely believe it, a fight occurred in the schoolroom, and some pupil or other who attends the class somehow insulted him. Besides, in this business, there were a good many incident and improper utterances, but all these he went and told his sister. Now, sister-in-law, you are well aware that though our son Rong's wife talks and laughs when she sees people, that she is nevertheless imaginative and withal too sensitive, so that no matter what she hears, she's for the most part bound to brood over it for 3 days and 5 nights, before she loses sight of it. And it's from this excessive sensitiveness that this complaint of hers arises. Today, when she heard that someone had insulted her brother, she felt both vexed and angry. Vexed that those fox-like, cur-like friends of his had moved right and wrong, and intrigued with this one and deluded that one. Angry that her brother had, by not learning anything profitable, and not having his mind set upon study, been the means of bringing about a roll at school, and on account of this affair, she was so upset that she did not even have her early meal. I went over a short while back and consoled her for a time, and likewise gave her brother a few words of advice, and after having packed off that brother of hers to the mansion on the other side, in search of Pao-yü, and having stood by and seen her have half a bowl of bird's nest soup, I at length came over. Now, sister-in-law, tell me, is my heart sore or not? Besides, as there's nowadays no good doctor, the mere thought of her complaint makes my heart feel as if it were actually pricked with needles. But do you and yours, perchance, know of any good practitioner? Mrs. Jin had, while listening to these words, been at an early period so filled with concern that she cast away to distant lands the reckless rage she had been in recently while at her sister-in-law's house, when she had determined to go and discuss matters over with Mrs. Qin. Upon hearing Mrs. Yu inquire of her about a good doctor, she lost no time in saying by way of reply, "Neither have we heard of any one speak of a good doctor, but from the account I've just heard of Mrs. Qin's illness, it may still, there's no saying, be some felicitous ailment. So, sister-in-law, don't let any one treat her recklessly, for were she to be treated for the wrong thing, the result may be dreadful." "Quite so," replied Mrs. Yu. But while they were talking, Chia Zhen came in from out of doors, and upon catching sight of Mrs. Jin, "Isn't this Mrs. Huang?" he inquired of Mrs. Yu, whereupon Mrs. Jin came forward and paid her respect to Chia Zhen. "Invite this lady to have her repast here before she goes," observed Chia Zhen to Mrs. Yu, and as he uttered these words he forthwith walked into the room on the off side. The object of Mrs. Jin's present visit has originally been to talk to Mrs. Qin about the insult which her brother had received from the hands of Chia Zhong. But when she heard that Mrs. Qin was ill, she did not have the courage to even so much as make mention of the object of her errand. Besides, as Chia Zhen and Mrs. Yu had given her a most cordial reception, her resentment was transformed into pleasure. So that after a while spent in a further chat about one thing and another, she at length returned to her home. It was only after the departure of Mrs. Jin that Chia Zhen came over and took a seat. "What did she have to say for herself during the visit today?" he asked of Mrs. Yu. "She said nothing much," replied Mrs. Yu. "When she first entered the room, her face bore somewhat of an angry look, but after a lengthy chat, and as soon as mention of our son's wife's illness was made, this angered look after all gradually abated. You also asked me to keep her for the repast, but having heard that our son's wife was so ill, she could not very well stay, so that all she did was to sit down, and after making a few more irrelevant remarks, she took her departure. But she had no request to make. To return, however, now to the illness of Rong's wife. It's urgent that you should find somewhere a good doctor to diagnose it for her, and whatever you do, you should lose no time. The whole body of doctors who at present go in and out of our household, are they worth having? Each one of them listens to what the patient has to say of the ailment, and then, adding a string of flowery sentences, out he comes with a long rigmarole, but they are exceedingly diligent in paying us visits, and in one day, 3 or 4 of them are here at least 4 and 5 times in rotation. They come and feel her pulse, they hold consultation together, and write their prescriptions, but, though she has taken their medicines, she has seen no improvement. On the contrary, she's compelled to change her clothes 3 and 5 times each day, and to sit up to see the doctor, a thing which, in fact, does the patient no good. This child, too, is somewhat simple, observed Chia Zhen, for what need has she to be taking off her clothes and changing them for others? And were she again to catch a chill, she would add something more to her illness, and won't it be dreadful? The clothes may be no matter how fine, but what is their worth after all? The health of our child is what is important to look to. And were she even to wear out a suit of new clothes a day, what would that too amount to? I was about to tell you that a short while back Feng Ziying came to see me, and perceiving that I had somewhat of a worried look, he asked me what was up, and I told him that our son's wife was not well at all. That as we couldn't get any good doctor, we couldn't determine with any certainty whether she was in an interesting condition or whether she was suffering from some disease. That as we could neither tell whether there was any danger or not, my heart was, for this reason, really very much distressed. Feng Ziying then explained that he knew a young doctor who had made a study of his profession, Zhang by surname and You Shi by name, whose learning was profound to a degree, who was, besides, most proficient in the principles of medicine, and had the knack of discriminating whether a patient would live or die. That this year he had come to the capital to purchase an official rank for his son, and that he was now living with him in his house. In view of these circumstances, not knowing but that if, perchance, the case of our daughter-in-law were placed in his hands, he couldn't avert the danger, I readily dispatched a servant, with a card of mine, to invite him to come. But the hour today being rather late, he probably wouldn't be round, but I believe he's sure to be here tomorrow. Besides, Feng Ziying was also on his return home to personally entreat him on my behalf, so that he's bound, when he has asked him, to come and see her. Let's therefore wait till Dr. Zhang has been here and seen her, when we can talk matters over. Mrs. Yu was very much cheered when she heard what was said. End of section 22, recording by Katarina Huang.